How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Remind me, one day I have to give you a picture from the graduation. Beautiful picture of you with the boy.
Oh, Thomas?
Your mom, yeah.
Oh, thanks. Austin's this year.
Okay. Can't believe how fast the time is going. Wow.
Yes.
What we did last week, PowerPoint, so you'll have two copies of what we covered last week.
Okay. All right. Oil, electricity, and what you have.
I start shopping.
We thought we were going to move in earlier.
He said like 10 hours You have your water in case we start.
Oh, you bet your life.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would kindly stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. At this time, I would like to ask for a motion from our executive session that the Board of Education accepts the stimulated agreement and moves to expel student C2013, who was the subject of executive session. May I have a motion to that effect? Thank you. Jody, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now, good evening to our guests and welcome to our second Board of Education workshop this evening. It's a pleasure to see all of you here tonight and some new members from our town board. Thank you. Just a reminder that this is a special meeting of the Board of Education for the purposes of reviewing the budget. So I would ask you if you would kindly make notes and keep your questions in mind, and there will be ample time at the end of the meeting for you to pose your questions. We look forward to that, and as I said, we welcome your input as we go through this budget process. There are also budget books at the end of the table here for anyone who has not received the book. We would just ask you at the end of the meeting if you would please leave them for us for our next meeting next week. Also, this meeting is being televised on Channel 22, our community access. It will also be videotaped and found on our district website. So we're looking forward to hearing from our administrators this evening. And if I just may, as I did last week, I would like to once again recognize our administrators, and we're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. We understand as Board of Education members that a tremendous amount of good work went into preparing this budget for many, many months, and it comes to us in good shape. So, thank you.
Good, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. This is workshop number 2, and if you recall last week when we met, we spent some time with the big picture, the general overview of this financial plan for the Waterford Public Schools. Then Phil Russell was able to walk you through the various district-wide accounts, recognizing that those accounts make up 30% of this financial request. We also spent some time talking about one of our biggest drivers in this budget, and that's in the tuition area for our students attending magnet schools, special education, etc. We also talked about our staffing and instructional services and curriculum and instruction with Craig Powers, along with professional development, and we concluded with an overview of the instructional technology throughout this budget with Ed Crane. And tonight we're going to shift and begin with buildings and grounds, then take a look at the special education components of this budget. Our 3 elementary principals will share with you the plan for the elementary schools for the upcoming fiscal year. Clark Lane Middle School, then Waterford High School, as well as with athletics. Really then have an opportunity to hear from all of you. Do you have any additional requests, additional work that you would like the administrative team to prepare for deliberation next week? when we put before you the adoption of this recommended budget. And then I think, as Kathleen talked about, we certainly want to make ample time for any public comments, questions, and suggestions. So with that in mind, Jay Miner is going to begin with the Buildings and Grounds financial proposal.
Good evening. This is the budget that we've proposed for the year. We've had a busy year. We've had storms to deal with. We've had snow and tropical storms. And we've supported the town with their Emergency Operations Center, distributing food, water, cots and emergency shelters, distributing generators around the town and the town hall. We even supplied power to a local farm that had a lot of problems with their nursery. And we've also been helping the town agencies, or senior services, youth services, public works, the firehouses, police department, and the technology department. The new Waterford High School will be turned over to us this spring, and we have a break from some of the maintenance costs that we have in our other buildings because of the warranties that will be in effect for about a year after we take delivery. A number of the equipment after the warranties expire next year will need to have more maintenance from my department, and therefore you're probably going to see a small increase as the buildings get older, all of the buildings, not just the high school. Okay. We're protecting our investment of these schools. We're keeping them clean and maintained. Filtration systems, cleaning systems, automated machinery to make sure that the manpower that we have is level and we don't have to add additional people with the more square foot areas and the different floor surfaces and cleaning areas that we have to do.
Page 63.
If you go to page 63, you'll see some of the backup on this particular line item. Vehicle maintenance. This is used to maintain and repair our equipment outside of what we normally do in-house. We do oil changes and things like that. But we don't have a service department for our vehicles. We don't have access to the town. Let me go back. We don't have access to the town garage, so all of our trucks that are outside of warranty, we have to repair under our own budget.
And you have a slight decrease in that particular line item.
12%. Are you going to do this? Fire extinguishers. These are required to be inspected annually, and we have them all sent out by the vendor. We also do the Ansel systems over the stoves in the Culinary Arts Department at the Waterford High School. That will be flat. These are funds used to repair the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems throughout the district. The accounts cover diagnostics and repairs of the computer systems and also the hydronic controls. These are outside contractor services. We also have mandatory annual state inspections. These are done by outside agencies on the fire and the sprinkler systems. The burglar alarms, refrigerator alarms, any HVAC alarms, because the buildings are all tied into dispatch. If there's any issues in the middle of the night with the equipment, call to the dispatch and we get called out to do the repairs. This has a zero change on this line item. General repairs. This budget line is to accomplish repairs by outside contractors on other equipment that we have in the district: inspection, scissor lifts, floor machines, power tools, roof repairs, and also our annual elevator inspections in the district. There's a 0% change on that. Site repairs, this is for anything on the playgrounds, parking lots, curbing, fencing, underground pipes, or wiring that needs to be repaired. This is used if we have to rent equipment that we don't have an inventory, aerial lifts, backhoes, things of those nature.
It's on page 57.
On page 57, yes. That's where the backup is. Travel, this is used for personnel that use their own vehicles and are not assigned a town truck.
You show a decrease in there,
There's a
Jay?
decrease of 900. Page 54, so it shows our service contracts. These are pest control, which is mandated by the state. We're not allowed to do any pest control that's not in accordance with our pest control management plan, which is dictated by the state of Connecticut. It also does our mandatory asbestos training, and for staff, chemical treatment of the boilers at the middle school and the high school. Also, snow removal, sanding services by outside contractors, but we haven't used that in this year.
Yeah, hopefully. You're looking at that funding in there again?
Class funding. Now on page 63, we have vehicle supplies. This budget line is used to purchase consumables on the vehicles, tires, oil trucks, repairs, if it's installed by our personnel. Custodial supplies, this is used for all the cleaning supplies and other consumables, toilet paper, paper towels, garbage soap, cleaning chemicals, mops, etc. That's flat as well.
Great.
Page 63, we have maintenance supplies. This budget line is used to purchase supplies to maintain the building, mostly on the HVAC equipment and the bulbs, ballasts, things like that, and any lumber or hardware that we need to take care of any of the work orders that we receive. Painting supplies, this is used on an ongoing basis on all the schools. Annually, we go through and touch up paint in the classrooms, in the hallways, and try to keep it as new looking as possible. That's down 22%. Page 63, this is the cost to operate the pool through the chlorination systems and the CO2 supply system. That's flat as well. The building committee, we've lowered this $1,000 because we're getting to the end of the project, and this covers the secretarial coverage and the meetings and supplies that are needed to make copies and things for this committee. Overall, we have a reduction from $359,800 to $355,700. $355.
Another $1,000 because we cut the school building the other night, so that's a good reduction. So questions that you have?
If I may, just ask Jay, as we've gone through the district and we looked at all of the different areas that we're regionalizing, is there any way to regionalize with any of the maintenance supplies? Has that ever been looked at?
We bid everything out annually, and we do get together with the vendors, and we have lists of standard scopers, and their prices are reflected in their most...
already done.
Yes.
Great. I just want to compliment you. This is really nice to see with the hard work that you're doing and that's going into putting this together, that you've been able to keep it in and keep the maintenance high quality and keep it at a very low percent, not an increase at all. Thank you. I didn't mean to, that was just on my mind before I paused.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Did you have a question, Jody?
I just wanted to thank Jen, too. I think it's great that you were able to do things. And also, I wanted to publicly thank you for all the hard work you do and supporting the rest of the high school. We still want to really don't even have to. If there's a problem, I'll have to be calling you. So I really appreciate that. And I'm really impressed with the fact that you also not only take care of the schools, but a lot of the other buildings in town. And I just had one question, though. Do you foresee doing any extra buildings at the high school to 3 levels now?
I don't think so. I think looking at the square footage and the coverage that we have with the equipment that we're getting to maintain the building, we're going to be quite comfortable there.
Did you have Mr. Jones, yeah.
The vehicle maintenance not at the town garage,
Yes.
is there a capacity issue? Would there be savings?
We've requested it in years past, and we've requested them to work on our vehicles in years past, and I guess their workload and their manpower is not adequate enough to take on our additional work for the vehicles.
Would there be, is there any way to save money by doing that? Is there other options?
So we have probably 30% of the fleet is still under warranty, so a lot of those issues are taken care of there. We've also been able to utilize a lot of the spaces of our mechanics after school for the lift and to take care of things like that. But the other items on the older vehicles, the major work that's done in the other repair facilities, could probably be taken over if the town was.
We talk about collaboration.
Take a look at it.
Right.
Right.
And maybe it wouldn't be efficient, but maybe it would be. I don't.
It would be something we could
We
look at.
can explore that again.
Any other questions for Jay? Sure.
Under the line item of school supplies,
Yes.
it looks like...
What page was that?
It's on page 63.
Uh-huh.
And it looks like our actual costs for 2011, 2012 were $85.97.
Yes.
But we're budgeting $13.5. Are we not using the...
We were shut down during the construction project, and
For months.
yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
Okay.
All right.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Kathy Ballone, Director of Special Services, to join us. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. Thanks.
Welcome.
So I'll be presenting this special education budget to you tonight. I'm excited to share some accomplishments that our department has worked on a great deal throughout this year. But before I do that, I wanted to share with you some things to keep in mind as we go through this budget. As Jerry reminded you in his opening presentation last week, special education has many federal and state mandates. Some of these mandates are partially funded, some are fully funded, most are not funded at all. And so that's an important thing that we need to keep in mind. Decisions that we make regarding services for our special education students are always made very carefully. We always consider the student's individualized needs and what's best for that student while being mindful of the cost. And we always exhaust all our internal options before we look outside. Confidentiality of our students is very important. So sometimes as I go through this budget, I will be speaking in general terms, but that's because I really need to maintain that confidentiality piece. This budget is based on known numbers and costs as of October 1st, 2012. So that's important to keep in mind as we go through. Magnet schools. I'm going to talk about that a little further on in the presentation, but I do want to let you know that that has a significant impact on the special education budget, whether the magnet school is approved by the Board of Education or not. I still need to provide those special education services to those students. Transportation continues to be a driver, and I will again address that coming up, but it's subject to change depending upon students' needs and placements. We have, and as you all know, a unique situation here in Waterford with our shelter and our safe home. I think Phil Martin, when he came in and did the presentation, did a really nice job talking to everybody about what Waterford Country School offers and the very unique needs that they provide to some very special students. But it does require us to provide educational services to those students if those students are no nexus students. And what that means is that we're financially responsible for students placed at the shelter or safe home or in foster home when their parents' rights have been terminated, their parents' whereabouts are unknown, or their parents are incarcerated. excess cost, as Jerry shared with us last week and Phil, that we have been told that will be decreased by 10%. Accomplishments. I want to share with you that we've opened specialized support centers in each of our elementary schools. Students are able to stay in their home school, and they're able to get the really specialized and supportive services in an alternative setting, but well within that, within the school. And so we're able to save on placements, outplacements. Clark Lane Middle School continues to have a very supportive very highly successful support center, and they're able again to keep students in district. In our high school, we opened a support center a year ago, and that continues to be very successful in helping students to get graduation credits and to then move on and be very successful, and we're able to keep those students from having otherwise be outplaced. We're providing professional development to our staff. We are providing for our certified staff a workshop on managing challenging behaviors. We're providing professional development to our paraprofessionals, and that ranges from everything from bullying, being mandated reporters, to first aid for our students, and we listed several of the workshops that we've been providing. As you heard Ed Crane share last week, technology has become a huge piece of what we do with all our students, but especially our special education students. The use of iPods and Kindles and iPads at the high school have been very successful for providing visual and auditory supports. All the elementary and middle schools have iPads for our special education students, and this is very cost effective and very highly motivating for our students. And we are opening a new autism classroom to be opening very soon in Oswegatchie School, and that will be for all our elementary school students, and it will provide those autism services that we might otherwise have to go outside for. Drivers. I'm going to refer you to pages 35 and 48. These are the drivers in our special education budget. On page 35, it's the special education transportation. This is specialized transportation for students that require this as part of their IEP, their individualized education plan. So this is summer school transportation, specialized school year transportation, etc. And this continues to be a driver, but as Phil shared with you last week, we are looking to go out to bid for special education transportation, so we are hopeful that we would be able to have some reduction there. And I continue to work with area districts on carpooling for some special education students if we're able to do that.
And you see a reduction in this request versus this past year. Mm-hmm. So we're really taking this on as a way to contain costs.
And if you refer to page 48, tuition. Tuition continues to be a driver in our special education budget. Overall in tuition, you'll see increases in several areas, and I want to highlight those areas for you. We have several students who require mandated transition services to age 21, and we have a group of those students, and that number has increased for next year. Bill Martin shared with us, and I believe someone on the board asked him what happens if a student isn't able to attend the Waterford Country School Day programs. The students' needs are too specialized, and we shared with you that you may need to look to an outside therapeutic placement, a more self-contained placement for that student. And we've had an increase in the students placed at the shelter and the safe homes that have required that type of a specialized outside placement. And we've also seen an increase in the number of DCF placements in foster homes within Waterford. So these have really been the three areas that have caused an increase in our tuition services. I also want to refer you back to the magnet schools, because our magnet schools, we pay a general education fee for our magnet school students, but then if the student is receiving special education services, we need to pay an additional special education service fee and additional for related services for those students. So that's where you'll see that cost amount. And I'll refer you to pages 43 through 47 in the budget book, because I think that gives you really some nice detailed descriptions of the different placements, and I think might be able to answer any questions that you have about different placements that we've used. Page 13, instructional services. This is tutors. Tutors that we use for homebound instruction due to health-related issues or mental health issues for students. And also this is for an ELL tutor that we provide for some of our ELL students in district. Per diem services, these numbers are based on trend data. There's been no increase. It's summer school services that are provided as part of a student's individualized education plan. Contracted services. I'll refer you to page 32. We share the cost with Groton Public Schools for a teacher of the visually impaired. So we are able to share that teacher with Groton, and we're able to provide some very individualized services to some of our visually impaired students in district. The cost of autism services. This is for providing students with autism applied behavioral analysis programs, and also for specialized summer services. Special education contracted services. This includes services such as providing interpreters, scoring of the last links, which is the evaluation that's used for our ELL students. Waterford Country School nurse. We are required by state statute to cover the health services for private nonprofit schools in our district. So that's where that money comes from. Medical advisor. It's best practice to have a medical advisor on call. If an issue comes up, we're able to consult with that medical advisor, and he's able to advise us on any issues that might come up. Outside evaluations and for general education students who are referred for outside evals, and then legal services.
You see either flat funding in those areas or some decreases. I think Kathy's really worked hard at that.
Other resources that we use in special education. I'll refer you to pages 54, 58, and 53. On page 54, other purchase services, travel. That's for staff that travel among our schools. TAG conference, Craig shared with us last week that we use the William and Mary program for our TAG students. This is to get staff trained to be able to have professional development regarding this William and Mary program. Instructional supplies on page 58. This is assistive technology, basically batteries for our FM units and our hearing aids. Supplies for our special education office, and testing materials and rental equipment. And then operations and maintenance, which is page 63, is the cost of our copier.
Which we do a little bit of in special education.
Just a little. Other special education resources, textbooks, our professional books amounts $150 on page 72, very minimal. Equipment on page 79. Again, Ed did a really nice job talking about our assistive technology last week. On page 79, we're able to share with you the cost for iPads and Kindles and FM units. I want to share with you that this is very cost effective for us, because if you think about the cost for some assistive communication devices run between $12,000 and $14,000. An iPad can do very similar things, and each year they get better and better for $500. So really we see a significant savings in using them. Dues and fees, very minimal. This is for our CONCASE membership and our CEC, which is the Council of Exceptional Children. Decreases. This is our excess cost. This is the dollar amount that we get back in our budget. So I want to give you an example. If the student services were to cost $100,000, for example, then we take 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure, which the per pupil expenditure is set by the state. 4.5 times that is roughly $64,000. So $100,000 for the student services minus the 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure of $64,000, you're left with $36,000. 70%, which is what the state has told us will be the excess cost amount this year, 70% of that amount is $25,200. That's what we would get back. Okay? So right now we're expecting to get back $737,923 in excess cost at this point in time. But I need to share with you that currently means we're losing $105,418 in excess cost funds due to the reduction from 80% to 70%, and that's significant.
And all of that was absorbed in this budget.
Mm-hmm. So what are we doing to try to help with these costs? We're sending a Waterford speech pathologist out to the Marine Science School and to the Isaac School to provide the related services in an effort to avoid additional related service costs there. We're going out to bid, as Phil told us, for the special education transportation. They were hoping to see some cost savings there. I'm continuing to work with area districts on carpooling when we are able to do that. We're currently designing an autism program in district, which I'm very excited about. And this will be a way to keep our autistic students in district and provide a really high-quality program. We have some tuition students who are attending Waterford schools. This money is money that we receive from other towns, and this money is returned to the town of Waterford.
So you won't see that as a revenue in our budget. That money would go directly back to the town. But I think it's important to know that we do charge tuition for students to attend the Waterford Public Schools, so that money does go to the town.
And we have a team of in-house school psychologists and speech pathologists who are providing ADOS evaluations. We, in the past, have had to go outside for these evaluations, and now we're able to do these evaluations in district. This is the Autism Diagnostic Observation Scale for students who could possibly be on the autism spectrum. So in summary, we're seeing an increase of $132,101, and this increase is directly related to tuition and our reduction in excess cost funding. So now I'll open it up for questions. Try to answer your questions. If I can't answer your questions, I will research it and I will promise to get back to you. Okay?
Are there questions for Kathy on the board? Dave?
Fuel expenses can be kind of irregular follow. Are we looking for like special discounts to deal on fuel?
If you're talking about the special ed transportation costs, we're really looking at, we have one vendor now. It has not been a competitive situation, and we're going to open it up to competitive bidders, which we already have a list of people very interested in competing with the cost that we're paying now. So that's where the primary savings would be. They did a service, so they have to pay for the fuel. They have to provide the drivers and the vehicle. So it's their dime if they miss on the gasoline.
Thank you, Dave. Other questions?
Just a couple. On your slide, things to keep in mind. The first bullet, magnet schools, including those that are not Board of Ed approved.
Well, you know, at one time when magnet schools were coming in into the area, usually there was a presentation to a board and the board would approve it. That's no longer a mandate. So I think when Phil and I, along with Craig last week, were talking about the tuition, we identified 2 or 3 new schools And we actually learned this fall when we received a bill that students from Waterford were attending. We had no knowledge. And so as part of the Chef O'Neill settlement, we have a legal requirement of paying the tuition when our students here in Waterford attend any magnet school. So that was a new, that was a surprise for us.
Okay, it doesn't mean it somewhere along the line. Well, I was listening to one of these.
No, I was even asleep with you.
Okay, and Learn is responsible for the educational quality of those magnet schools, is that correct?
Not all of them. New London as well.
New London.
Yeah, so in the Learn region, there are some Learn schools. We actually have children going all the way up to Wyndham, which EastCon would be responsible for. And so when a magnet school is approved by the state of Connecticut, it's approved by the state of Connecticut as a public school. And once it's approved, then because Connecticut is a choice state, children can go to those schools, and if parents can provide the transportation up there, we are left with the tuition costs.
But they still have same accreditation requirements?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a vetting process.
Yeah.
Okay, one other question. How many students outside of Waterford are attending Waterford schools this current year?
Special education or magnet school?
How many are attending the magnet schools?
No, attending
Outside.
Waterford schools
Oh,
from
outside.
outside.
So I
We have
believe
about
that's
100 with
on page-
magnet.
Oh,
coming in.
Students that are here.
So
Oh.
currently, if we include the Friendship School, which has 168 3 and 4-year-olds, 75 kindergartners, we have RMMS with 38, Winthrop STEM with 3, Dual Language with 4, Isaac with 7. That's 295 students, elementary. And if we look at Ledyard Voag, Grosso Tech, Norwich Tech, Science and Technology Magnet of New London, Marine Science, and the Middle College High School, we're looking at 116 high school age students that attend those schools, so outside of Waterford.
I meant the reverse.
7.
Seven.
7 students in Waterford.
That we are charging tuition for.
But didn't we do a good job?
Sorry.
Kathy, just a point of clarification.
Sure.
I know with the Common Core standards that all of the various pieces of the curriculum are having to meet new standards, and I'm sure that impacts special ed.
Mhm.
Do you foresee any additional needs coming forward in the special ed budget, not necessarily in this budget, but in the future? If you can give that thought with professional development and what needs to be done in order to get our special ed students.
I mean, I'm hopeful that the regional professional development, and they've already started doing that, have begun focusing on that, and Learn has been providing workshops and professional development on that. So I hope that we can continue to work on that.
One thing, and I don't have the mark here on my card, but I noticed when I'm happy at all the changes we've made with the tag program, but I noticed in that line, wherever it was at that point, that you had nothing in there for any supplies for the tag, but we're able to pull that together.
That's coming right out of the building-based
The
budget.
buildings now.
So we've moved that right into the building.
And I just want to compliment you on the assistive pieces with the technology, with the iPads and all of that good work. And I asked Jerry, I'm just curious, I know we've done this with the special ed, with the teacher of the blind that we've shared the services brought in. Could you just tell me how that works? Does the person stay here how do they split the time between daily splitting the time, or how does that work?
She divides her days, and we work with Groton on dividing them up, but it's literally half and half.
Okay. So
50-50. And it really depends if I were to have students with services that maybe I required a few more hours, I might be able to work with Groton, and Groton does the same thing with me, depending, but they've been very, very good working with us, and it's been very helpful.
And then I'm just very pleased to see that all the creativity and the innovation to save money and to make sure that we're doing a good job. Thank you. I just will say with the speech pathologist and the special services going over to the magnet schools, we're saving money.
We are.
But we're still able, our services, we still have ample service here.
We're meeting the needs.
Yes, we're meeting our needs,
Right.
and we're saving money at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very good, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A couple of things. First of all, in the first page, it just makes mention that the budget is based on known numbers as of October 1.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any kind of data that indicates what kinds of variance we might be looking at regarding, changes in placement, changes in situations that might drive it one way or another?
Yeah, we've done projections
Right.
with our known students, but it's hard to project what we're not certain of.
What a family
I don't
member
know
will
who's
have.
moving in or out.
Yeah. Along the same line, how early will we know for next year students who are going to be attending that numbers? When do they make their selection?
Yeah, I mean, they begin in selection in March, and we are made aware of some of them in late spring and some of them over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So we can still get curveballs all of the ones who are...
But now that we know, we can be a little bit more proactive. We actually read in the paper that the program was starting like the next week and that some of our students would be attending.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the drivers, there's a mention about students requiring transition services up to the age of 21, and there's just a mention that we have a larger number. That's just based on our population now.
Exactly.
A higher number of...
They turned
Yeah.
18.
They turned 18 and they'll be leaving the high school and they will be continuing on till 21.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I'm looking at page 49 under the line item of students and guidance, and I think we had this conversation last year about perhaps, I think we might have mentioned that we had one student whose situation was around $500,000 for that one student. And this was last year, if I remember correctly. I'm just wondering if we have
No, 250. Yeah.
any kind of suggestion of when those possibilities would be. It's a big learning for us.
Those students' specialized needs require a very, very specialized placement, and we really take it very seriously when we make the decision about that placement, and there's multiple needs involved with those students, which raise the cost.
Okay, so I'm hearing students, it's plural, it's not, it's just...
In some cases, it's I believe, what page is that?
51.
51, sorry.
Oh,
okay.
Numbers,
If you go to 51, you'll be able to see the numbers.
same dollar.
You'll see it, and the dollar amounts are there.
I was just wondering if they were students that were, on the younger scale or on the older, so that we could look forward to 5 years from now, maybe having them, graduate or really good stuff.
They will age out, but that's going to be, depending upon their age, several years.
We need to be careful on confidentiality because you see some small numbers there. And the other thing that I just want to share with you, Kathy and the staff that work with her, they look at a series of interventions, and it may be that we arrive at that location because we've tried some other opportunities prior to, but this is really the right thing for that particular student.
May I just ask you a little bit on the carpooling piece? That's interesting, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by carpooling.
So if a student is traveling to another outside school, so I'll use, for example, For example, if a school was in Hartford and I was sending a student there, I could call around to New London, to East Lyme, to Groton, and say, are you sending a student to that town? Could we carpool together? Could we put 2 students in one car and split the cost?
The service.
And split that cost to the transportation.
That's what, because I know that's in...
Delivery service.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery service, yeah.
And then maybe not tonight, but at some point, just, I would be curious to learn a little bit more about that innovative program that you're doing, the autism program.
Sure.
We would love to. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. There are no other... Dave?
The medical line, what kind of things do you offer? How often?
It depends upon the needs that come up, but if you think back to the H1N1, we were consulting a real lot during that time. So it really depends upon issues that go on, but we also consult about individual cases as well as widespread issues that are going on.
And even advice around some of the placements when it's a medical issue that's part of the student's plan. So they're helpful with that as well. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathy. We're going to move to the 3 elementary schools and invite our 3 principals up.
Welcome to the table.
Well, thank you. I'll be here.
Thank you so much.
I'm ready to go.
You all set?
I'm set. Good evening. I'm going to start off the elementary presentation by just reviewing some of our accomplishments. As Kathy mentioned earlier, each of our buildings houses a support center, and I can't emphasize enough how successful that has been so far this year, being able to keep our children in their home schools with the teachers collaborating together and providing excellent support for those children with their own friends and neighbors. We continue to use a math intern and tutor, providing daily math support to our students, and also collaborating with classroom teachers, providing support in the classrooms. We've been very busy implementing our new math curriculum, which is aligned with the Common Core. All 3 of our schools participate in a wide variety of school-wide reading initiatives. We're working hard to provide a continuum of support under the SRBI, or Scientifically Research-Based Intervention. You've heard us before refer to Tier 1, Tier 2 interventions, and that's where we're providing the extra support for our students. Professional development, mentioned again here, as you've heard in other departments as they've presented their budgets. Our PLC work with teachers, and most importantly, our professional development is planned by our teachers and presented to our teachers, so there's a lot of in-house collaboration in districts going on. Our professional development is very much focused on the implementation of the Common Core. Our district is in the 2nd year of participating in instructional rounds training. Each of the schools has had 1 round, and now we're halfway through the 2nd year. We are very busy implementing our new teacher evaluation plan. Our schools participate in a wide variety of Learn inter-district programs. We have very successful mentor programs. We have student-to-student mentors going on in some of our schools. We work closely with the Youth Service Bureau and with the high school seniors coming in and spending time in our schools helping children. We continue to support character education and good citizenship programs. We have service learning projects that benefit the community. We have student councils that are very active in our buildings. We enjoy the continued luxury of wonderful parent support and involvement in all of our buildings. We've been phasing in a breakfast program at the elementary level, which is very successful. even enjoyed by some adults coming to have breakfast with their children lately. Our school climate committees are up and running. We completed surveys last year, which gave us a nice baseline, and we're working hard to always continue to improve our school climate. It's yours.
Okay. So the bulk of our budget is really driven by enrollment, and the projected enrollment that you see here are the same figures that Craig shared with you last Thursday when he was explaining the staffing and the number of FTEs for the 2013-2014 school year. As you recall, due to financial constraints over the past 2 years, our classes in some grade levels were larger. For instance, if you reference on page 94 of your appendix of your budget book, you can see that 2 of our schools currently have 24 and 25 students in grade 5, and I believe at grade 4, numbers are high at Oswegatchie School as well. So as a team, what we did is we looked at our class sizes on each level, and we made every concerted effort to follow the Board of Ed's operating budget assumptions and keep within those guidelines. We're highly confident in our grades 1 through 5 figures for next year, as we simply take our current enrollment and then we just move them a grade level forward for next year with those numbers. In determining grade 1 numbers, we take our current kindergarten students and then we add the Waterford Friendship School children who will move up to each of our schools. And then the kindergarten numbers you see really are our best projection, and we use trend data with that. We'll have a better picture in the spring when we have our registration. And that's when we get the bulk of our numbers of registration. So for our proposed budget, I hope you can see that, but you have your books. You can see that they're the same at each of our schools. If you reference pages 54, 57, and 58 in your budget book, you can see what we actually spent this year. We used that information as well in defining our needs. So for conferences, we determined that $1,800 was appropriate since we provide much of our professional development, as Pat mentioned just a moment ago, and Nancy will address it too in our programming needs. In a containment effort, we put our heads together and we determined that we needed to hold the line for general supplies. Again, you can see what we spent in the 2011-2000 school year on page 57, and then we increased it this school year. Our AV supplies are the same, and that money is really targeted primarily for the replacement of Promethean bulbs. I think they're $200 each, so we need to replace those from time to time. Our textbook account, you'll see that we increased, we built in an additional $5,000 back into our budget. Last year, we had our newly adopted math curriculum, and so the district covers the cost of our math materials and supplies. They purchased all our texts and our consumables, and now our buildings are going to be responsible to replace those for next year, so we needed to add that $5,000 in. And then finally, we all increased very happily, our library budget, which we have held at $750 for the past 5 years, primarily for subscriptions. And when we consolidated our schools, we thought that was okay, but that was 5 years ago, and now we really feel like it's time to replenish our library collection. So that's why we're out.
Could you pass the microphone down?
Sure.
At the elementary level, our programming needs reflect our goal of maintaining excellence while also remaining fiscally responsible. The elementary budget is a needs-based budget driven by the data that we have currently, and it's mindful of the programming needs of our students. One of our priorities in developing this budget, as both Linda and Pat have already alluded to, is maintaining the current class size ratios. We know from research and from our observed best practice that one of the major factors in the student's success is that relationship with the teacher. So adherence to the Board of Education class size guidelines is a key factor in developing that optimal student-teacher relationship. And so all of the class sizes that you saw Brenda illustrate in the projected enrollment are within the Board of Education class size guidelines. This elementary budget also supports the continued use of the math tutor that Pat and Glenda both spoke about, so that our students can continue to receive that targeted intervention and math support on a regular basis. As we implement those SRBI practices, we have students in Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, depending on the severity of their needs, who can receive math instruction to support their classroom instruction in the new MyMath curriculum. And we've seen some really nice gains this year in terms of student performance in math with this additional math support from the interns. You've heard a number of times already that this budget going forward also focuses the district on continuous improvement. And one of the key factors that we feel contributes to that is the professional development for our teachers and our staff, which predominantly occurs in-house now. It's developed by teachers for teachers. Our teacher leaders, our curriculum leaders are organizing the professional development. And some of our special area teachers continue to participate in the more regionalized offerings depending on those areas of expertise, like physical psychologists and speech pathologists. So there is some off-site professional development for those areas. And then in terms of efficiency, as with each section of this budget, we have a number of cost containment efforts in place at the elementary level. Our reliance on electronic communication with our school constituents, and that's mainly our email and our weekly electronic newsletters. Our purchasing is needs-based, so again, driven by the materials and the resources and the support that our students need to be successful. We're fortunate that many of our teachers and classes at each of the elementaries participate in some grant-funded programs, so those definitely enhance and enrich the educational experience that we provide here in Waterford. And some of those programs are like the Magical Mystery Writers or Bio Buddies, Palace and Pixel. They're also aimed at reducing the economic and ethnic isolation of our students and promote some pretty diverse educational experiences for our students, because we're partnered up with students and classes from neighboring urban districts. And then, as you heard too, we are so fortunate at the elementary level to have some very active and involved parent groups at each school. And through their fundraising efforts, they support a number of cultural and enrichment programs for our students, and also support our field trips so that our classes can travel to curricular-related destinations like the Connecticut Science Center, the Seaplex Seacoast Nature Center, the GARD, the State Capitol in Hartford. So those are some nice field trips that are supported by our respective CPOs and help to contain the costs in the elementary budget that's currently before you. So we'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have about the elementary budget.
Questions from the board? May just say I want to compliment the administrators. I noticed as I went through that you really looked at the actual expenditure back in 2011-12 and really tried to come in. It was really very much needs-based, and I would very much approve of increasing the library piece with the periodicals. We cut that way back, and that held steady for so long, so that's very much needed. But just the collaboration that the three of you have done with each other, I think it's really helped us to produce this budget that still meets the needs of the children, as you said, but is very cost efficient. The only comment I have, and I appreciate all of the following the board guidelines on the class size, I would say we'll keep an eye on one of the elementary classes that is a little bit, it's borderline, so we'll need to see what the figures are as we come in so that we know whether, but there's some variables, so as you always say, Mr. Eric, it's a fluid document, so we'll see where we are, but thank you for the presentation. You answered, I think these presentations do so much good for the board because see we have our little notes and cards, but as you go through the presentation, you actually answer most of those areas, so thank you very much. At least you answered all of mine. I think so. I don't see any more, so thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move to the middle school, and then we'll conclude with the high school and then get into any further discussion you have.
Hi, Jim. Hi. How are you? Good evening. Before I begin my budget presentation, I would like to just thank Jerry and Craig and my fellow administrators for just really pushing us during the summer and the fall to really look at these budgets in interesting new ways to support our programs in our school. So first I'd like to point out on slide 2 our accomplishments. We obviously continue to focus on literacy across all of our disciplines. PLC meetings are very important to us weekly, and that's one area where we present our Common Core through our teachers after a great deal of training, both on Professional Development Day and those who went out to specific conferences. We finished up our second instructional rounds this December. We had one last year, and we had an internal one, and we had one on the 13th of December, which was very successful, and that information is being presented to our staff in February, and it's focused on Bloom's taxonomy, and we felt that we gleaned a lot of great information from that, so it's a very great process for us to be part of. Professional conferences increased a little bit from last year, funding-wise, but we've had a number of really great conferences that teachers have attended, and just recently in the past 2 faculty meetings, 3 of our teachers have presented to the entire staff. One was on dyslexia, there were 2 on technology, so we're really happy that we're not only having teachers attend some very enlightening and pertinent conferences, but they're coming back and sharing that information with our teachers. A lot of our work supports the Common Core state standards, and we, of course, are working very hard on our evaluation system pilot. Also, accomplishments are obviously the continued focus on the middle school model, meaning all of those programs that are fashioned to support that unique adolescent age group. Our mentoring program continues. It was new last year, and right now we're in the process of our 8th graders beginning to work with the 6th graders, and they're very excited about that. And we're excited because it builds a nice leadership group for us then to send on to the high school. Our student success plans are in the initial pilot stage, and our Safe School Climate, which was a really, really big effort and push last year following legislation, is in place and functions very well, and has actually been quite busy lately with events in the news. We continue to promote our school code of conduct and theme, Reflect, Respect, and Respond. We have a lot of climate assemblies with each of our grades, and we've seen a lot of payoff from those and a lot of support from parents. PTO series most recently the first was about technology in the classroom, and a lot of parents showed up and our teachers demonstrated how they're using technology. And our next one is going to be about student perspectives, being 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And we, of course, enjoy our collaboration with youth services. The story of our budget is mostly one of reallocation. If you would refer to page 54, 57, 58, 62, and 72, and I put the page numbers by the actual reductions and increases. What we did is really looked at areas of need and looked at areas where we thought we had adequate funding, and we really just reallocated and reprioritized. So as you can see, we took some money we increased money to music and athletic transportation for new activities and field trips that they take. We added some funding to guidance department for the student success plan initiatives, and we're very grateful that the board is considering a new guidance counselor for our school, because we really feel that ratio of 1 to 340 is quite high. We are certainly supporting our Common Core initiatives and interventions. We're adding some more money to our TAG, mostly for transportation or field trip. Computer education, and we did take some money from areas such as AV repair, general supplies, computer supplies, design tech, science, social studies, textbooks, library, and athletic supplies. So we really have a zero-based budget, but we feel that we can really support our programs, that we can continue supporting the great work of the elementary school and send on to the high school some highly motivated, engaged, and productive young students. So that's we're also very excited about the new configuration for TAG that Mr. Powers mentioned last week. We think that will go a long way to help sort of finally take care of the need for some math intervention at our school.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Questions? Have you been getting enough money to fill for your library books? I know it's
I think that is adequately funded right now. I think we feel that between that and the amount of students who are purchasing books online and even through free electronic services, I think we can keep up with that with this funding.
I had the same question. I did actually the math on it, but I figured you were going to say that they were really trying to use all the various tools that are out there, so you were able to compensate. We just would like to compliment the middle school for the reallocation of the funding too. It looks like you really put a lot of work into moving the different departments around, so you kept the budget down. I think you've answered this, but I just like to run on the music. We have extra on music. Did we anticipate?
Well, like for instance, recently they were invited to play at a hockey game at intermission. So we're just trying to support areas where they can do performances, and it's very worthwhile. And the parents usually accompany the students, and it's great for them to play in front of live audiences. Oh, another cost containment, too, is our support system. Our support center, as Kathy mentioned, that prevents us from outplacing students. So we get better at that every year, and it really contains costs for the district overall.
No, that's mentioned for the third time. I was going to, we were doing last night, that we always had the support center before, though, but we're adding, is that it?
We've restructured it.
We've restructured it.
Yeah.
So at the middle school level and at the high school level, there was always a support center. And at the elementary, we had a primary located at one school, which meant when we had 5 schools, any children K-2 and now 3 schools would go to that one school. And then we had an upper elementary at a different site. So we had them, but it meant that, as Pat alluded to and stated, that children would then go from their normal, their assigned school area to maybe a different school because that's where the services are. By having a support center at each school service K through 5, everyone can stay at their home school, and there can be really an expansion of services. So it's a really better utilization of staffing.
Thank you, Chris.
One question. 3 guidance counselors. Will they be grade specific or will they start?
Yeah, most likely the model we will follow is they will follow a grade, because that way they get to know the student's concerns, issues, and the family. And that's personally my feeling, is that that's the model we should use.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Don Macrino.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, Jim. Anytime. You're welcome. Sure. Great.
Your turn to sit in the hot seat, Mr. Macrino.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. So we'll review the high school budget, and the first 2 photographs that you see perhaps will serve almost as a metaphor. Beyond the physical difference in the building, you saw the old entrance and you see one of the new entrances, and you see a very stark contrast in the profile of the building. But when I speak of a metaphor, I guess I would say that within the past 3 years, the high school really has gone through a significant transition in the way we do business. With the onset of the Common Core and a commitment by the district and by the high school for literacy and math skills, we've really had to change the way we do things. So as we go through this, I'll list a few of our accomplishments, and then I will go into more detail with some of the actual budget lines. To foster our literacy commitment, we have a literacy specialist added to the high school, and this individual visits classes, particularly in the 9th grade, and in history and in English. She is a teacher of teachers in that she brings her specialized training to the classroom and enhances our teachers' ability to deliver literacy instruction to students in the 9th grade. She's also available to any of our other teachers, and in fact visits some of the non-core departments and provides them with a new bag of tricks, something really quite new for some high school teachers because we've not dealt with literacy in this way ever before. We've really done the same thing in math, and we've been very, very fortunate to have a math specialist who is top-notch, who also can go out and deliver specialized skills to our math teachers and enhance their ability to reach a much greater number of students, and again, particularly at the 9th grade levels. However, she is available to the entire department. So those are two really wonderful additions to the high school. We reintroduced freshman sports. That is up and running. We have restored our LTS coordinator to a full-time position, and by doing that, we've been able to do, I believe, a far better job at keeping track of legitimate hours and also fostering projects that are more aligned with the curriculum, and we'll continue to build on that philosophy. World language resources have been significantly enhanced, and we've really come into the 21st century with the use of technology. We have a couple of software programs that you and I may remember the old language labs. This far exceeds that. This allows students at any place, even in the cafeteria at the high school, to go online live and practice their whatever language they happen to be studying with specialists in that language from around the world. So it's really a giant advancement, and it's cutting edge. And again, it knows no particular space. They can do that anywhere. Math resources, the math curriculum has been rewritten, and along with that, there have been the introduction of electronic textbooks in that department. They're working out very, very well. They not only provide us with the great resource of a textbook online, but with that service, you can also get some you can get assessments that the students can take on their own to practice, and you can get instant data recovery so that it actually feeds the department along with the math specialist to attack particular weaknesses. And it has significantly bolstered, I think, our climb to greater success in math at Waterford High School. And when you take a look at the student activities page, you will, I think the most significant thing that you will notice is the number of students that are involved at Waterford High School beyond academics. We really are very, very fortunate to support a myriad of activities that students from all walks can enjoy, from football to fencing to drama to dance, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look at the enrollment, this enrollment represents some average numbers out of the core areas. Now, as you know, we have a wide variety of courses in every department. And when we take a look at this, this will give you a thumbnail sketch of where we generally stand in terms of enrollment per class.
And this is really to reflect the reduction of 2 staff positions at Waterford High School.
This is an overview of each of the lines that we'll take a look at. It really represents each of the main areas at the high school. And I think as you look at the detail, you'll find that if we have not flat budgeted most of the lines, there has been a reduction. But there have been a few exceptions, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. So the first area, and you can refer to pages 62 to 63 for details, but this area is represented by funds that are used for repairs throughout the building, including lights, microphones, digital cameras that have to be serviced each year, copiers, phones, shop machinery that needs to be sharpened or repaired, tools, et cetera, and among these are among the items funded. Also, we're required each year to provide safety inspections for our physical ed equipment, including our Project Adventure, which is a kind of a rock climbing thing, and many of you have seen part of it in the field house.
You note the decrease there. So last week in my opening, I talked about that we have an opportunity this year with moving into a new school. We're able to reduce this particular line item because we're under warranty with so much of the equipment. And so Don has looked very closely at this and reduced this particular line item.
Now for conferences, these service our staff, and if we are to be that high school of the 21st century, we really can't stand still and rely simply on the degrees that our teachers have come to us with. So there's a constant honing of their skills, and this is where the money goes here. And this is just a small sampling of some of the possibilities that they go to college board conferences, 21st century skills conferences that deal specifically with the Common Core as it may relate to their subject area. We have some AP conferences that our teachers attend, and so on. Field trips. These are the academic field trips that are directly related to curriculum, and they provide a kind of a third dimension to the classwork that students are involved in. And again, this is a sampling of some of those areas. The Science Olympiad, the Mock UN, you saw a presentation on that a year ago, and we're very impressed by the work done there. The Ocean Bowl, Latin Day, Berkeley Music Festival, and Construction Engineering Building Project. Our students in Construction Engineering go out once a year and build a small building on a site here in Waterford, so they get some real field experience. So again, you can see that it goes across departments. This slide refers, and you can refer to pages 57 and 58 to see the details, but this really represents all of the supplies in the school, from the paper that we use to the pencils to the chart paper to the batteries to the laminations that we do in the library and poster board, etc. The funds also support our graduation ceremony, and as you know, when we have graduation outside, we have to rent chairs, and there are a number of expenses associated with graduation. So that all comes out of that account.
A slight decrease in that area.
Yes. Textbooks. This money is used to support our literacy initiative and to replace damaged books. I tried to estimate, and I'm not really very good at that, but during any given year at the high school, there are probably in excess of 10,000 books in circulation. If you consider the number of textbooks that the kids use, the novelettes that they use, the books that they take from the library, the supplemental reading, and so forth. And believe it or not, they do get worn. Some of them get lost. Some of them get damaged. So we have to try to continue to replace those books, but we also are heavily invested in our PLCs, where teachers come together and they assess on an ongoing basis what's needed to supplement particular areas of study. So over the course of the year, we do purchase some supplemental materials that we feel are needed to enhance our literacy initiative, and that is represented here. These funds are used to keep the library current as an information resource and to support curriculum. Our media specialist has done an excellent job in communicating with each of the departments to be sure that our library has been brought into the 21st century. Not only are these hard material books, but it also represents some resources that are online and some electronic books. And here is a breakdown of our student activity. And if you will take a look at each of the items, there's more detail on page 76 that you can refer to. And athletics, this is a breakdown of the expenses for each of the teams that we field. I think you will pleasantly note that we have great equity between our genders with the girls' sports and the boys. You will note that football is the most expensive of the sports, and the reasons for that are really quite obvious. But you can see the comparisons there.
I think before Don moves, when you're looking at the budgets for both the athletics and the activities combined, there is a slight reduction. And again, in an effort to really try to hold on to what we have and how can we do this a little bit more efficiently. So working closely with Dave Sousa, we have a slight reduction.
Yeah. And athletic transportation, we've done our very best using historic information and present data to come up with as close of a figure as we possibly can, and that's represented in that grand total that you see on the bottom right, and the detail for that is on page 54. And this last page of detail, you can go to page 82, but these are our dues and fees, and I will point to two or three of them in particular. The first one is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. That is the agency that certifies the high school, so to speak, in its accreditation process, and many of you sat with us through that accreditation a few years ago. And that will be coming up again in about 7 years. But we have to do 2-year reports and keep them up to speed, and they're very pleased to hear about our new building because they've been asking about that for the past 8 years. And we've held them off quite nicely. Yes, it's in the mail. Also, I think you should draw your attention to the $4,600, which is a required cost to be a member of the Connecticut Association of Schools. That's the agency that underwrites all of our athletic contests at the state and local level. So that's obligatory if we want to compete. The other associations there, much of them are related to the guidance department, where we get up-to-date college and postgraduate information. And then the NASSP is the National Association of Secondary Schools and National Association of Secondary School Principals. And one of those costs is paid directly through the Connecticut Association, and the second one is for supplemental literature and so forth that we use at the high school. And then we conclude with a new day and an absolutely beautiful high school that everybody over there is very excited about moving into, and we're very, very thankful to all of the agencies here tonight that have helped provide for that. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Don from the board? Dave?
How would we expect the computers, iPads, electronic books to get hacked, those kind of questions? Are there any plans to replace more and more hard copies with electronic?
Yes, there are plans to move in that direction. It's difficult for me to estimate what the the financial impact will be, but as students begin to use their own personal tablets more, and I think, as Jim said, from the middle school, as they bring in more of their own electronic books, that's certainly going to push us in the right direction, I think, as far as that goes.
So an example, I think, our Waterford Public, our town of Waterford librarian, Roz, really is the leader in this with electronic books. But something that our librarian at the high school is rolling out this year is really with some iPads and to have some online subscription, so you can download a book like for 2 weeks, and then the book sort of disappears off the iPad, and then you return the iPad, and another kid can download a book, or the same child. And so instead of just loaning out books and handing them back, there are these digital subscriptions. And those services then, exactly, Dave. And so those services would be part of that.
And Dave, the majority of student research now is done electronically. They seldom, they won't go to like an old encyclopedia or anything. Everything is done online. And part of our curriculum also, is, I will just mention quickly, is to teach kids how to do that appropriately and to find the right sources.
Other questions from the board for John?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Good job.
So that really concludes the presentation of all the areas outlined within this budget. And so I think what would be very helpful for us as an administrative team is to hear back from you. Is there additional research, additional suggestions that you have for us in preparation of adoption of a budget next week?
Sarah, I have another question on page 54.
Yep.
And then this is about field trips. Because John mentioned, underline item there, field trips for the high school, but how are the field trips funded for the elementary and for Parkland?
Sure. So we continue to build that into the contract with our transportation. So we have 200 field trips built into that contract, and we equally divide them for the elementary to have access to, including the French high school to have some access to.
And costs associated with attendance or to get into the science center, that's...
Family responsibility.
Okay. So then what do we use the $8,000 for the high school field trip?
That's music competition.
Yes.
Yes, Matt.
Yep.
Most of those are entry fees and so forth. There are fees associated with each of those. When we enter into the Connecticut contest for any of the music competitions or festivals, there's usually a significant charge to enter into those, along with the Olympiads.
Other questions, comments? I'd like to hear a little more from the board members, but I'd just like to make a general comment that I think that this board appreciates the hard work that went into this budget. We can all tell that it's driven by the data that we use in the district, that it keeps it's a fiscally responsible budget, but it maintains some of the board goals that we've established on the small class size. I think I don't speak for the board. I think we appreciate the additional guidance counselor at Clark Lane. That was well deserved and needed. The periodicals, there are very few additions as you go throughout this budget, and a case has been made by each of the presenters as to why it's needed. So from my perspective, I think this is a very fiscally responsible budget, but that it maintains our excellence in education. A 1.5% increase, as we can see, is a prudent budget, and if you take out the drivers that we've identified, particularly the high tuition costs, that would be down another %, and then those few others that are outside of the board's control would be in the minus area. I think we noticed with the contracts that have taken place recently, the teacher contracts, the employee benefits are down, getting the health services under control. All those variables have really helped to produce this budget. at 1.5%. So I'm speaking for myself. I'd like to hear comments from the rest of the board as to whether you see any additional needs, or if there are areas in this budget that you do not agree with, that you would like to see changed. This is your opportunity. Again, next week we won't take any final action tonight. Next week we'll have another occasion. If there are any other questions that you haven't thought of or that you would like additional information for. Before I do forget, Kevin Brunel did ask to just have some backup information, if possible, on the solar panel, and that would be at some other point.
Yeah. None of that's in this budget. Those were all, I was really surprised by the great deal of conversation we had last week, but that's one of the opportunities we're looking into for additional savings. And before we would move in that direction, we would come to the board and share a presentation.
Sherry?
So kind of along those lines, if I remember correctly from last year, we sort of adopted a budget, or at least talked about our budget, but it was a moving target because we were going out to bid for
health.
Yeah, and transportation. Are we pretty comfortable with this 1.5%? And you may have talked about this last week, and I might have forgotten over the last 7 days, but you know, we're not waiting to get anything in terms of numbers. We're pretty comfortable with where everything is.
If we can hold firm with what our revenue projections are, because they're down 10% and not go any lower. So when we talk about the excess cost cap, that it really truly stays at 70 and we don't find out at 65. What we presented to you regarding the health insurance, what we've been advised, and Phil, I just want to check myself on this, that's really the worst case scenario. So one of the things that we did last year when we presented the budget, we had that line item flat. And then we needed to come back once we had gone to bid and readjust that. So this is with a projected rate increase of 12%, and then taking off all of the savings that we have related to that as a result of our negotiations, the establishment of an HSA, and education of our employees. So you see a decrease of well over $300,000 in that particular line item, even though that's an increase. So I'm pretty confident in that at this point. I think the wild card is, as Kathy says, is our special education budget is built on what we knew as of October 1st. And so any of that can change with new students, new families moving into the district. It could also change if a family leaves our district. We certainly learned from Bill Martin when he shared with us, well, we go through in the last week of August, we have no knowledge of who will be placed here in Waterford. But again, what we tried to do was kind of build it off of trend data, what our experience has been. So I would say to you, we're pretty confident, Sherry.
And I think that you and the rest of the administrators deserve a good pat on the back for bringing in, proposing a budget at 1.5. That's unheard of in the last several years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Sherry. Any other feelings from the board? Tim?
Along those same lines, healthcare, projected at a 12% increase, we may, with God's smile on us, realize savings that are possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the transportation bidding is done with an eye on saving money.
Right.
We're not putting that out to bid to get somewhat
higher cost. No, we're not.
So that we could probably be reasonably confident that that's either flatlined or perhaps some savings. So in those two driving areas, we may have a fairly decent shot at realizing some savings.
There may be some additional savings, and I think if I refer you back to that slide where I talked about the fluid process, so here's where we are in January. We'll have another data point when we go to the Board of Finance. Then we'll have another data point with the RTM. So that if there are savings, as well as I would say to you if there's some additional costs. So I'll give you an example. Bill talked about, we built the budget, we printed the budget, and the day before we met with Dan and Rudy and we took a look at workman's comp, and then we took at our liability insurance, and we realized that we've under budgeted that. The good news is we under budgeted by 1%, and it's a few $1,000s, so we're not talking hundreds of thousands. So we'll adopt a budget based upon what we know next Thursday, but if we can still reduce that a little bit further, I won't keep that secret. I'll share that with the Board of Finance in March, and then if we're down a little bit further, I'll share that with the RTM. So that's our commitment.
Your comment? If I may just say that a lot of hard work has gone into this budget in the stabilization piece, and because of that work that has taken place over the last few years, this budget is able to come in at this percentage. I'm sure as we go out and we project out for the years, these are going to be continuous savings.
We hope.
So we're trying the very best we can at the Board of Education level to stabilize costs, but maintain the excellence that we have in our schools. I just think that's an important point because I know we're doing the best we can to keep the budget at a reasonable increase. Thank you. Now, to our guests this evening, you have ample opportunity to ask anybody disagree with us, agree with us. You can add your comments if there's any areas that we've overlooked that you think we should be investigating. I know you've had a chance last week, many of you, to take a look, and again tonight, and of course we'll take final action next week, but I'd like to open the floor to our guests this evening. Do you have any comments? Bill? First.
I have a long page through from my notes.
Okay.
Basically, just on the buildings and so on. Based on recent events in this state, do you see any urgent changes to the buildings that you're going to have to...
Around safety? We had a meeting earlier this week with all of our elementary staff along with the chief of police, and that was a question that we put on the table. And we're going to be doing the same thing with middle and high next week. And one of the things that we're doing, Bill, is we're having the police walk through our buildings as well alongside of our administrators, custodians, just to take a look to see if there's any areas that we need to shore up. So one of the things I said at that meeting is right now we have nothing in the budget around that. I think the good news, quite frankly, is really in the design of our new schools. So being able to lock the classroom doors from the inside versus having to go out into the hall and put a key. So we're identifying, and we may have a short list. I don't think it will be a big list. And so that may be one of the things that I raise when I come in March. So that's something that we started this week.
You say you can't use the town garage because of the capacity problem? Is that the question that I got from one earlier question?
I just need to turn to Jay on that one. But you know what I would say, Bill, is that was raised tonight. We'll further explore that. Yeah.
We'll also ask Public Works about that. In fact, I expect when the Public Works budget gets question on your rental of equipment, does the town, i.e. Public Works or Rec and Parks, or have equipment that well, I generally hear more about Public Works and Rec and Parks borrow the Board of Education piece of equipment as opposed to the other way around.
And you know what one of the things, Bill, is I think we've worked so well, we don't worry about whose equipment it is. You know, I think one of the things that I really encouraged Jay to do this evening in the opening of his presentation, and I think that's the real plus here in this community, the collaboration. So we didn't plan the tropical storms. We didn't plan the early snowstorm, but you know what? We didn't worry about whether it was maintenance on the board side or custodians. We just all got together and worked it through. And that seems to be the practice here, and I think both sides have a lot of pride in that.
Another thing you might want to look at is knowing what equipment other towns have, because there's a standard CIND MOU that allows a town to go to another town. Now, most of the time it's for emergency purposes, even for routine purposes. If one town has a certain piece of equipment because of a new structure of one of their buildings that maybe could be borrowed for a day or two.
That's a great thought.
For a nominal fee. And then there's some stuff that's held by the town, so it really belongs they're really intended for emergency management purposes, but they're also very useful tools in routine measures. The Demis region has gotten some very interesting, I don't want to use the word toys, but basically equipment that can be used, and the folks that operate the stuff are really happy to be able to still use it because it's really intended to be used in emergencies, but it can be used for routine maintenance or some unusual maintenance. So,
You can explore that. That's good.
Something you might want to look at with some of the other towns. Special ed, I think we'll probably know what the excess cost is going to be when the government produces his budget in 2 weeks.
Maybe. Sometimes we find out, believe it or not, in April, late April or early May, believe it or not.
Well, you see the figures what the government's told, and when they get a read from the legislature how they think about that. I know it's early in the process, but also because of recent events, do we have any training or briefings or whatever planned in the mental health area that will help the teachers pick out, and especially in the middle school and the high school, where because of this natural development there are some you've got to figure out, is this a normal teenager or is there something else going on, and being able to get those
right. So we're sensitive to that. Yeah.
This is a real dumb place. Since I don't have any kids in the school system and haven't for over 10 years, how many kids in math today? I mean, basically, it's no longer geometry, trig, and algebra. Are there other advances?
You have calculus, pre-cal, you have data analysis and stat. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, believe it or not. Yeah. Probability, stat and probability. That's an underlying in the curriculum. Yeah.
Bill, can I just ask you for a moment, because I'm not sure how long are you? I'm not trying to cut you off. Okay.
Okay. In your enrollment for the high school, you give what the average class size is in 1918 and so on. My question is, what's the actual teacher load? In other words, the class may be 19, but if the teacher's got 3 classes of 19, that's...
It's generally a little over 100.
Right.
And within that, when you offer an advanced placement class, you may have a class of 15, but your Algebra 2 class may be 22 or 23. And then when you offer just one course, it may be a little bit higher, but that's the average.
May I just ask, what is the range of class size?
Yeah.
The average, I would like to know.
Sure. So generally speaking, with our standard level classes, we try to keep them a little bit smaller, like 16 to 18 range. With our advanced, we try to keep it within the 18 to 20 range. And our honors, they're 20 to 22 range. There are some anomalies due to when it is in the schedule, but that's the general range.
And library books and so on. This last summer, or actually fall, I went to my wife's 50th high school reunion at Barrington High School in Rhode Island, and we got a tour of their library. Almost no books. Basically, there were 3 rows of shelves of books. Everything else were iPads, iPods, and basically little cubicles for the students to come and pump their iPad and their iPod and plug in and go online and do their thing. And that's the library of the future.
It is. That's the Waterford High School library, by the way, as well. And it's really just not in the library. It's anywhere, at any time, at school, outside of school.
I think it's great. But then again, I grew up on a book and
Okay.
that's it. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Would you please identify yourself?
Dawn Bach.
Yes.
Hi, Don.
Couple of questions. One question I have is the town obligated to provide transportation to students who choose to attend any of the area magnet schools?
No, we're not legally obligated, but we do.
We do.
We do.
If you choose not to provide that transportation, perhaps we would retain those students in our own education system and save our tuition as well as the cost of the transportation.
Don, one of the things that we shared last week at our workshop, and that was an area that I really dug deep when I realized what our costs were. We also receive a magnet transportation grant from the state of Connecticut. And so we're projecting our cost would be about $17,000, and we receive about $94,000 from the state. So financially, it kind of makes sense. I think the other thing, and I'll be curious to see if this happens, I think once we open our new high school, I think more of our students will remain in Waterford.
Second question is, in the synopsis of the high school, and what the high school budget here did not say anything about the reduction of staff, but you quickly highlighted that that included a reduction of 2 staff members at the high school. And I wanted to mention that the targeted teachers that those are going to be affecting are pretty high. Well, one of them in particular is a high-level teacher, and I was hoping that perhaps it was evaluated as to what the impact of that teacher's loss to the students would be, not just the fact that you're eliminating the staff position in order to accommodate the fact that you've got a reduction in students. Because that particular individual teaches a pretty high-level teaching. You just can't seem to replace an individual with that capacity or that level of teaching caliber. And I think that would be a great loss to the body.
I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Are there other comments, questions, anything you would like the board to investigate for this? Okay. Hearing none, we can move back to our board. And just a reminder again, we'll meet early next meeting on Thursday at 6 o'clock. And
We have a 6 o'clock executive session.
And we will meet again at 7, and we'll take our final action on this budget next week. So thank you again to everyone. And I wanted to, before we close, recognize our first selectman. Excuse me. I didn't recognize you, Dan.
Thank you, everybody.
And if you have a budget book, if you could bring it back to the table.
Oh, yes.
We'll also
And motion to adjourn. Second by Jody. All those in favor? Thank you.
I don't think it's good.